Jin-Woo scratched his head, unsure if Tank liked the name or not. The bear always roared so loudly that Jin-Woo couldn't tell if he was happy or not. As they approached the bright beam of light, Tank slowed down, his big paws stopping right where the light started. "Great job, Tank," Jin-Woo said with a grin, scratching behind the bear's ears before Tank disappeared into a shadow. Turning around, Jin-Woo heard that familiar opping sound. "You've found the magic teleportation circle." The circle glowed on the ground, shooting light up like a super tall flashlight beam. Jin-Woo stepped inside, expecting something cool to happen, but nothing did. Jin-Woo stood in the middle of the circle feeling a bit puzzled. He walked a little farther and stopped. A message popped up. "No floors have been opened. Which floor would you like to teleport to?" "How many floors are there?" Jin-Woo asked out loud. But there was no answer. "Do I really have to figure this out on my own?" Jin-Woo thought for a moment. Should he keep leveling up where he was until he met the requirement? Or should he move forward and level up as he went? One thing was sure, monsters here don't respawn like they do in other dungeons, so staying on one floor wouldn't help him much. Plus, the higher floors had tougher demons with more than one soul. Jin-Woo decided it would be best for both his progress and completing the quest to head up as soon as possible. "All right," he said firmly, making up his mind. "Time to go up. Second floor acts an entry permit is required." When Jin-Woo heard the voice, he pulled out the scroll from his inventory. In an instant it vanished into light. "Floor 2 of the demon's castle has been unlocked." Teleporting to floor 2, a bright light burst from the magic circle beneath him. Jin-Woo's eyes widened as understanding hit him. "Oh, so it was basically just an elevator." Just as Jin-Woo figured this out, a bright flash of light surrounded him, whisking him away to the second floor. Before he knew it, he zoomed through the third, fourth and kept going all the way up to the 27th floor. In just 2 days. He had told Gina he was leaving for a week-long trip, but now he had 5 whole days left. Considering how fast Jin-Woo was speeding through each level, he felt pretty sure he wouldn't even need those 5 days to reach the top. He glanced around quickly, taking in his new surroundings. The world around Jin-Woo looked empty and eerie. He had no clue which city he was in anymore. Each floor was supposed to resemble a different city, but as he climbed higher, everything became more ruined. By the 27th floor, Jin-Woo was totally confused. Was this what cities would look like after being bombed heavily? Shaking his head, he pushed that thought away. He didn't have time for that. A quick glance at his watch showed it was 11 p.m. No sunlight. No moonlight, just endless darkness. Jin-Woo glanced at his watch. If it said 11 o'clock, then it was time to grab some shut-eye so he could recharge for battle tomorrow. But first, should he take a peek at where he stood? He checked his progress. 1116 demon souls collected out of 10,000 needed. That's over 2,000 already. At this rate he was taking down about 1,000 demons a day. Not bad, but there were still plenty more to go. Wow, that's a ton of demons caught in just 2 days. But 10,000 is still pretty far off. Still, he was excited about the higher floors where demons have multiple souls. He knew he had to keep moving up. Next, he checked his level. What? Jin-Woo couldn't believe his eyes. His level skyrocketed to 67 overnight. Low-rank demons gave him only 100 XP each, but mid-rank demons handed over a cool 300 XP, helping him level up super fast. He was really making progress, with tons of monsters, lots of XP, and challenges that were just right. The demon's castle was the perfect spot for leveling up. Not only was his level going up, but other things were too. Jin-Woo was getting better with his skills every day. Even right now, Night Killer floated in the air above his palm. This was thanks to Ruler's Hand, Jin-Woo's power to move things without touching them. It felt like having a magic trick built into his body. Jin-Woo didn't stop practicing, even when he was resting. The cool thing about Ruler's Hand, it didn't use any mana. All it needed was focus, which could get a little tiring, but that was a small price to pay, if it meant getting stronger. And boom. He got a reward for all that hard work. The Ruler's Hand has leveled up. Jin-Woo leaned back against the wall, a big grin spreading across his face. Getting stronger always made him feel good. His eyes drifted shut, and suddenly he thought about Jinyo. By now, Jinyo should have his guildmaster's license all sorted out. Jin-Woo wondered how his friend was doing. It had been a while since they'd teamed up, and it was nice to remember the times Jinyo used to tag along behind him. The older brother was crushing it as a businessman, and the younger one, still in college, was rocking that guildmaster role. This was gonna be tough, but Jin-Woo could handle it. As he drifted off to sleep, he silently cheered himself on. The next day, with a determined look, Jin-Woo walked into the fancy Korean restaurant he had chosen, knowing his dad would like it. "Is Chairman Yu here?" he asked. "Yes," came the reply. Taking a deep breath, he followed the server to a private room where his father waited. The sliding door creaked open, and seeing his dad made Jin-Woo's anxiety spike. Jin-Woo felt a bit unsure, but he took a deep breath and sat down across from his dad. "What's this about?" he asked. "You've never wanted to meet like this before." His father looked curious. "Dad, please take a look at this first," Jin-Woo said, holding out some papers. "This is," his dad replied, confusion in his voice. Jin-Woo smiled slightly. "Here's my guildmaster license and records of the raids I've joined." His dad's eyes widened. "A guildmaster's license?" Mayam-han's eyes widened in shock. Jin-Woo nodded with a small smile. "Yes, father." Mayam-han picked up the papers and scanned them. His gaze stopped at something that made his eyes light up with interest. He stared silently, his brow furrowed. The quiet was making Jin-Woo nervous. His chest pounded like a drum, and he could barely catch his breath. Finally, Mayam-han set the papers aside. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair with a curious smirk. "So, are you really saying you want to take over the Eugene Guild?" "That's exactly what I mean, father." Mayam-han looked unsure for a moment, which surprised me. It was crazy to think he was actually considering choosing between my brother and me. Jin-Woo looked super happy, like he'd already won something big. Before, just getting this far would have been enough for him. But now he wasn't going to back down. "You know as well as I do how dangerous it is to give such power to an outsider," and Mayam-han suddenly raised his hand, signaling Jin-Woo to stop. Jin-Woo immediately fell silent. His dad's word was law, and when he said enough, no one dared argue. But his dad dropped a surprise. "There's someone I want you to meet." Jin-Woo's eyes widened in confusion. She was the one who'd set up this meeting. Who could his dad have brought along? Before he could ask, the door on the far side of the room slid open. A man who looked like he was in his late 20s or early 30s stepped inside, fumbling with his greeting. Eyes. Jin-Woo stared, puzzled. Who was this guy? Jin-Woo stared at the man but couldn't place him. His father, Mayun-han, motioned for the stranger to sit down beside him. "This is Hunter Mayun-hwan-ko," he said. Jin-Woo tilted his head in confusion. Who was Mayun-hwan-ko? He'd never heard that name before. His father gave a knowing nod, as if expecting Jin-Woo's confusion. "He's from the White Tiger Guild," he explained. "One of the few who survived the Red Gate incident." Jin-Woo didn't know how to react. Red Gate. Why was his dad bringing that up now? It was a massive scandal, and Jin-Woo had heard about it before, but he couldn't see how it linked this meeting. The man sitting there was a survivor. Someone the media had been desperate to interview. Jin-Woo was super confused. Why would this person be here? Mayung-han studied Jin-Woo for a moment before speaking. "I guess you don't know," he said. Jin-Woo asked, even more puzzled. Mayung-han ignored his confused son and turned to Mayung-han, who looked nervous. "Hunter Ko," he said. "Yes, sir," Mayung-han replied. Mayung-han nodded. "Tell my son about the others who were there that day, besides the White Tiger Guild trainees." "Understood," Mayung-han said, turning his attention to Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo accidentally locked eyes with him, and it was like a big question mark popped into his mind. Minwan said, "A young female hunter who looked like a high school student." A young female hunter. Jin-Woo couldn't believe what name would come next out of Minwan's mouth. Jinwan Sung. Jin-Woo felt like his heart skipped a beat. Was the boss really in the Red Gate? How did that even happen? His mind went from confused to totally mixed up. Then something clicked. Wait a minute. Jin-Woo had talked to Songi, like they were old friends, even though he'd never really noticed her before, and the name of the young female hunter. It's Songi Han. Jin-Hyo's jaw practically hit the floor. Now it all made sense. Does this mean? My Unwan quickly confirmed what Jin-Hyo was thinking. Songe and the rest of us from White Tiger barely made it out alive through that Red Gate. And it was all thanks to Jin-Woo Sung. Jin-Hyo couldn't help but laugh in surprise and excitement. For a moment he even forgot his dad was standing there. What exactly happened back there? he asked eagerly. My Unwan looked at Jin-Woo's father, waiting for the nod to go on. Once he got it, my Unwan's eyes lit up with excitement as he began to tell the story. So here's what went down, my Unwan said, barely containing his excitement. At first they were all confused. Why would two E-rank hunters want to watch their training? But then, things took a wild turn. And Fark, Gino's eyes widened in shock. My Hwan nodded, grinning like he'd just pulled off the ultimate prank. Yeah, Jin-Woo just opened his hand like this. My Hwan demonstrated with his own hand. And boom, Chul hit the ground in an instant. Whoa, whoa, Gino's heart was racing as he listened to the story. That sounded so like Jin-Woo taking down high-ranking magic beasts with his bare hands like it was no big deal. But wait, could Jin-Woo really take out an A-rank hunter with just one hit? Gino's mind was blown. My Unhwan's partner felt happy and proud to be teamed up with such an amazing person. My Unhwan kept going with his story. When those ice elves showed up we thought we were doomed for sure, he said, making it sound super intense. But before anyone knew it, time had zoomed by really fast. Even though the story was long, my Unhwan was wrapping it up. By the end he got super excited, and a bit loud. It was insane. Jin-Woo saved everyone there. Jin-Woo found himself nodding along without even realizing it. He totally got how my bun felt after all. Jin-Woo had saved him too. The guild kept telling us not to spill anything about Jin-Woo. My bun continued, shaking his head. I already thought that was a weird move on their part. But then Chairman Yu reached out, and just as he said that, the chairman stepped in politely. Hunter Myung Ko, someone said. Sir, another voice replied. Myung scratched the back of his head, looking a bit embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I got a little carried away. The chairman turned to his son with a knowing smile. So, while I was digging up info on Hunter Jin-Woo Sung, he said, holding up one finger like he was sharing a secret, an unexpected name popped up. He leaned in and pointed to Jinyo's name on the paper. Jinyo stared at the list of raid missions he'd been given earlier. His eyes scanned down the page until they landed on a familiar name, Jin-Woo Sung. There it was in black and white proof that Jin-Woo had helped him get his guildmaster's license. Jinyo gulped. He knew he was caught red-handed. His dad must have figured out that Jin-Woo was involved. Hunter Jin-Woo Sung was a big help in getting your guildmaster's license. The document stated bluntly. Jinyo tensed up knowing there was no way to deny it now. Do you admit to this? I do. Is there anything else you want to say? Jinho felt like he was in big trouble. His dad had found out that Jinho had stepped in to help him get his guildmaster's license. And now Jinho could tell his father was questioning whether he was truly capable of leading the Yujin Guild. His dad shot him that look. Jinyo's hands trembled like they always did when his father gave him that look. But this time he didn't back down. For the first time ever he stood up to his dad. He kept his head low but raised his voice. Let me run the Yujin Guild, he said. His dad's response caught him off guard. Sure. Jinho's eyes widened in shock. Huh? You can have the guild, his father replied casually. Jinho's jaw dropped. What? His dad shrugged. You asked for it yourself. It's all yours. Handing over that kind of power to someone outside our family is way too risky. Why take that chance when I have you? Jinho replied hesitantly. But I tried to deceive you. And, his father cut him off with a surprising response. Did you really think I'd punish you, and then kick you out? Jinho wondered if his dad was actually smiling behind his usual straight face. If you had been careless and recklessly raided dungeons, maybe. But I don't remember raising a fool, he said. Jinho's face turned bright red. I would have been punished and disowned if it wasn't for you, boss. He thought. No, actually, I'd probably have been killed before that even happened. Jinho felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he agreed. But then he added, there's one condition. Whatever you say, sir, Jinho replied quickly. The room fell silent for a moment before Jinho spoke up again. Can you bring Hunter Jin-Woo Sung into the Yujin Guild? Jinho's eyes nearly popped out. Bring the boss, he blurted. For a second, my Young-han looked curious. Yes, exactly, Jinho said firmly. But inside, Jinho was panicking. Even a kid could have told him to act confident in front of his dad. But the other person involved was his boss. Asking wouldn't be a problem but still. So Jinho told the truth. I don't know, he said. Of course you don't. The chairman replied. No one said meeting this condition would be easy. He took a sip of water and wiped his mouth with a handkerchief. If you fail, I'll hand the guild over to your brother. Still care to try? Jin-Woo's face was set with determination. He had worked so hard to get this far. If he backed down now, he couldn't face Jin-Woo. I'll give it a shot, Jin-Woo said, his voice steady. My young hand nodded silently, as Jin-Woo stood up and bowed before leaving the room. Once Jin-Woo was gone, my young hand pulled the handkerchief out of his mouth. He couldn't stop grinning. That boy he'd actually asked to lead the Yujin Guild. My In-Won had a feeling what Jin-Woo wanted when he called the meeting, but he hadn't expected his son to be so brave. After all, even a tiger cub is still a tiger. The chairman's face lit up with a smile, a rare sight for someone as serious as him. Chairman Yu was known for keeping his emotions locked away, no matter if he was happy or sad. My In-Won stared in surprise as the chairman turned to him and asked, "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" Hunter Ko. Startled, my In-Won quickly shook his head. No sir. 47, 48, 49, 50. Jin-Woo climbed the floors at an incredible speed. You have defeated a mid-rank demon. You have acquired 300 experience points. You have acquired 1 demon soul. The messages kept popping up as he took down demon after demon. He expected to feel tired, but seeing his experience points and soul counter go up with each kill made the exhaustion disappear. Demon souls collected, 43088, 10,000, still less than half. It felt like he'd been hunting non-stop since arriving here, but 10,000 seemed far away. But his level, all level 69, he had leveled up twice in just one day. Even though his experience wasn't skyrocketing like before, it was still climbing faster than the soul counter. Every second, Jin-Woo's experience points kept going up. Tress. Suddenly, messages flashed in front of him. Flaw, a mid-rank demon. Us. You have acquired 300 experience points. Us. You have acquired. Tress. Woo. Jin-Woo stretched his back and looked around after defeating the last demon he'd faced. The ground was covered with demon corpses, and his soldiers stood tall, waiting for orders. Clap, clap, tramp. Jin-Woo cheered happily, congratulating his team on a job well done. Good job, Jin-Woo said with a tired smile. His soldiers, worn out from the fight, quickly gathered around him. While they could collect essence stones, only Jin-Woo could pick up items. Every time the system buzzed in his ear, asking if he wanted to acquire something, he had to respond. It was super annoying. That's why he fought alone when there weren't many demons and called in his soldiers, only when a big group showed up. As soon as the battle ended, Jin-Woo got to work collecting the spoils. He couldn't help but wonder why Jin-Woo wanted to keep doing this job. Was he actually enjoying it? Jin-Woo chuckled to himself as he grabbed an item from a dead monster's body. But there was one downside: no shadow extraction in the demon's castle. No matter if it was a high-ranking or lower-level demon, the telltale black smoke just wouldn't show up. Without that smoke, extraction was impossible. No matter how long Jin-Woo stared at the body, he couldn't get anything useful out of it. Every time he tried, the same message popped up. The mana is contaminated. You cannot extract the shadow. Harry sighed, feeling disappointed. There was nothing he could do about it. As he searched the bodies, another message suddenly appeared with a thumping. Harry's. You found 29 mid-rank demon horns. Would you like to take them all? From Gentry's face lit up. Of course he would. His disappointment about the shadow thing vanished instantly, as he collected all the items. But none of these horns were useful to him, so he decided to sell them all. After selling everything, a huge amount of gold was added to his balance. He couldn't help but check his balance, and was shocked. I'd found 114,699. 72 gold. Whoa, Jin-Woo exclaimed, amazed by the number. He was sitting on a massive pile of gold, over 900 million. That's what happens when you've defeated over 4,000 demons. Each of those battles gave him 200,000 gold, just for the demon horns alone. And let's not forget all the other items he sold along the way. With that kind of cash piling up, he could buy anything he wanted. So should he go ahead and grab himself an S-rank weapon? He thought about it but then shook his head. Just because he had a ton of gold, didn't mean he needed to spend it without thinking. I'll find the perfect thing to use it on someday, he told himself. With that, Jin-Woo closed his inventory and brushed off his hands, satisfied with how things were going. He had already cleared the area and gotten the entry permit for the 51st floor a while back, so all that was left was to hop on the elevator. But he glanced toward the beam of light. Something stood a short distance in front of the magic circle. Towering demon surrounded by several high-ranking demons, who seemed ready for a fight. Jin-Woo looked up. Floating in the air were black letters that read, Avaricious Vulcan, Lord of the Lower Floors. The demon was massive. It looked like it weighed as much as a building. In its hand was a huge club that could easily smash anything in its way. But Jin-Woo wasn't scared. Instead, he smiled to himself. So, that's the mid-boss, huh? He had great memories of fighting bosses in these dungeons. They always gave him tons of XP and dropped awesome loot. Compared to Magic Beast bosses, which were tough, but didn't give much loot, monster bosses felt like gifts. Jin-Woo rubbed his hands together, grinning wider. What awesome drops would this one have? He took a deep breath, ready for the fight. 10 Avaricious Vulcan, shall we? Shadow soldiers lined up neatly behind him. There were infantry mages, shadow beasts, and even the 2 knights standing at attention. Jin-Woo stepped forward with Igris on his right, and Iron on his left. He smiled, feeling satisfied, and reassured. These guys always had his back, but clashing head-on, that could get dicey. The biggest problem was the club Vulcan was carrying. Honestly, I couldn't believe there was even a tree tall enough. He looked like he could swing that massive club once and send them all flying. Sure, soldiers can fall, but the real issue was the magic energy needed to keep bringing back soldiers smashed by that gigantic weapon. There was no other choice but to take matters into his own hands. Jin-Woo would tackle this himself. He'd let his soldiers handle the smaller threats while he faced Vulcan. This was his plan. His goal was simple: strike without getting hit. Unlike his soldiers, Jin-Woo was sure he could dodge Vulcan's attacks. First things first, Jin-Woo knew he had to split Vulcan away from its minions. He told his mage soldiers to start the attack. Use your range attacks to lure Vulcan's followers toward us, he instructed. And then we'll take down Vulcan in a one-on-one battle. The plan was simple and clear. Jin-Woo gave the signal, and the mages unleashed fireballs from their hands. Afoom! Afoom! The explosions lit up the battlefield near Vulcan's army. Suddenly warnings started popping up. Avaricious Vulcan, Lord of the Lower Floors, has detected intruders. The full Vulcan's guard has detected. The full Vulcan's guard has detected. The full Vulcan and his minions all swung around at the same time when the alerts blared. Perfect Jin-Woo had gotten their attention just like he wanted. He flipped on stealth, turning invisible so he could sneak up behind them and strike. Everything was going smoothly, or so it seemed. Then, without warning, Vulcan suddenly charged straight at them. It felt like someone hit the fast-forward button. Before Jin-Woo could even blink, Vulcan was already standing right in front of his shadow soldiers. Oh no. Jin-Woo's heart raced as panic set in. It was hard to believe that a monster as big as a mountain could move so fast. Vulcan hoisted its club, ready to strike. Before the blow could hit the defenseless mages, Iron burst onto the scene, his shield glowing bright blue. With a loud clang, he blocked the attack. But even with all his strength, both of Iron's arms were smashed beyond recognition. The strongest shadow warrior was out of action, after just one hit. Pieces of his shattered armor clattered to the ground. His mangled arms hung limp, making it clear he couldn't fight anymore.